As you can see in your bulletin, you will have a note, sermon notes. I believe it's the third page. You will see there's a question. And the question is love a choice? I want you to think about it. Is love a choice? But before we answer that question, we have to answer another question. What is love? What is the definition of love? I want you to think about it for a second. Imagine what your answer would be. So what is love? Think about it. And then later we will compare notes. But then if I ask, what is love? I have to ask, which love are we talking about? And now you might think, some people might know already where I'm going with this, which love type. And if you don't know, you might think, we have only one word, right? It's just love. So, for example, I asked the youth on Friday, I asked them this question, what is love? And I got various answers. I got different kind of answers. For example, I love chocolate, right? For example. Or some people say, okay, love is when you care for your dog. Or love is when you care for a friend. Or love is, for example, relationship between boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife. And other people said different stuff. So you see, I got different answers about love, but I can't compare like the love for chocolate. Is that the same of loving a friend? Is the love for, in my case, my favorite food is hamburger. So I love hamburger. So if you like to treat me one day or surprise me, bring me hamburger. Yeah, that would be amazing. So I have a girlfriend too, so I love her. And I love hamburgers. I love my parents and my brothers, but I also love all of you. Now, those can't be possibly the same emotion, right? I can't put them next to each other, but we use the same word for it, love. How can that be? Well, it only makes sense if there are multiple definitions of the word love. In English, we only have one word, but in Greek, the language of the New Testament, there are actually 4 different words that are all translated as love. As I mentioned before, hamburgers. This is a great example of the first love type, Eros, right? Hamburger is something that I want, is something that I desire, but then it will go away. When I eat it, I don't want another burger per se. It's like if I eat like a Big Mama from Between Two Buns, right? I'm done for the day, pretty much. So this is the kind of love we can categorize it as Eros. But Eros, if you heard before also, we can compare it to the romantic love between a man and a woman. The desire, between husband and wife, but also boyfriend and girlfriend, and etc. So, but Eros is the Greek word. But let's see the definition first. So, what I want to point out today is that Eros love is a love that can fade. And also, it cannot be chosen. For example, can you choose to fall in love? Or you just fall in love, right? You fall in love. That's why we say fall in love. I decide to walk in this door so I can fall in love? No, it doesn't make sense. So you fall in love, it means you can't control it. You don't choose to fall in love erosly. For example, the hamburger, I don't choose to fall in love with it. The first time I tasted it, I was like, oh, this is amazing, right? So in this case, you can think someone is attractive, sure, but that's not the same thing of being in love with them, is it? Romantic or sexual love is a powerful gift from God. But I use the term powerful gift on purpose because Eros can also be misused and misapplied. And that is why I want to give an example of how that can be. Because we have to answer the question, is love a choice? Now in this case we see that Eros is not a choice, but I want to give the example that this Eros, they portray it in movies and songs like it's a so perfect love. But is it really perfect? Well, I want to go to Judges chapter 16, 4-8, to give an example of Samson. So I'm going to open my Bible right here, and we're going to read from Judges chapter 16, starting by 4 till 8. Judges chapter 16, right? Yep, there we go. So here, it's talking about Samson. I'm going to read it. After this, it came about that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, "Entice him, and see where his great strength lies, and how we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him. Then we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me where your great strength is, and how you may bound to afflict you." Samson said to her, "If they bind me with 7 fresh cords that have not been dried, then I will become weak and be like any other man." So in this case, for the ones who knows the story, we know that the 7 cords won't hold Samson. But for this example, you see that Samson, he fell in love with a Philistine. And in this situation, in that time, Philistines, they're not a follower of God. It means they were against each other. So he was just going after his feelings. So he looked at a beautiful woman, and he fell in love with her. So he went after her, not for anything else, but just for the desire, right? Just like the hamburgers, but in this case, yeah, the woman, the Philistines. So, but first, for the ones who don't know, I will explain a little bit of who is Samson. He was a Nazarite, which is kind of like a Jewish monk. He was not allowed to cut his hair, drink alcohol, and not to come in contact with corpses or graves, even those of his own family. Nazarites were specifically set apart by God and for God. So this man, he was not just a normal guy. He had extraordinary strength from God, but he had to follow and continue obeying God for him to keep his strength. Because his strength was not his own, but it was of God. So here, I will continue to go to see this guy fell in love with Delilah. And now I will go to the betrayal of Delilah. Because I said that Eros' love is not perfect and can be misused and misapplied. So here we can see, if we go to verse 15 of the same chapter, we will see, "Then he said to him," Delilah said to Samson, "How can you say, 'I love you'," see the word here, "when your heart is not with me? You have deceived me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength is." In this case, Samson told her that, "Hey, if you do this, that will take away my strength," but those 3 times it wasn't true. So here we go. "You have deceived me 3 times and have not told me where your great strength is." It came about when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, that his soul was annoyed to death. So he told her all that was in his heart and said to her, "A razor has never come to my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and be like any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her all that was in his heart, and now I want to point out heart. See, he's not thinking with his mind, he's thinking with his heart. And remember, the Bible tells us that our heart is deceitful. So she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up once more, for he has told me all that is in his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees and called for the man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his hair. Then she began to afflict him, and his strength left him. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson!" And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out at other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him, because he disobeyed him. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes, and they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains, and he was a grinder in the prison. So we see the betrayal right here of Delilah, that he loved Delilah. But what kind of love was it? It was Eros. He decided with his heart, and when she convinced him, he was so in love that he just told her the truth of his strength. And in this case, Samson disobeyed God by telling Delilah the secret to his strength, his long hair. Samson knew that he shouldn't fall in love with a Philistine woman because she was not a follower of God. However, even though he couldn't stop that feeling, he could have stopped himself from acting on those feelings. Eventually, the feelings of love for the wrong person would fade away. So you see here, the feeling itself, so the Eros love itself, we cannot control. So we cannot choose to fall in love. But what we can choose is what we do with that feeling. How do we act on that? So that is basically Eros. But we're not going to stay there, because we have to answer the question, is love a choice? And it depends. In this case, we see that Eros is not a choice, but we say love. So there must be other types. So I would like to mention another type here is Philia, or Fileo. That's the love type. You will see it also written in the note. Now the question is Philia love perfect? Does Philia love fade, just like Eros can? Well, let's take a look. But first, let's take a look at a definition. Philia is loosely translated as brotherly love, or as we'd prefer today, the love between friends. Now, Philia love is not something that can be chosen. You can choose to be kind, you can choose to be friendly, but you can't choose friendship. It just happens. The problem with that is Philia love can also be confusing. Philia love can be corrupted and turned into something evil. Let me give an example. For example, when you go to school, or in my case, or work, do you choose to be someone's friend with a Philia, or you just meet someone and it's like, oh wow, we have common ground, this is amazing, cool, and you start talking and you just clicked, right? You have that click. You don't have that with everybody. You don't have the click with everybody. So if I go, like, for example, in a place that nobody has any common ground, me, for example, I love hamburgers, I'm a musician, I love adventure. What if I go to a place that nobody loves hamburgers, they hate hamburgers, and they're not musician, not per se, but they hate music, and they don't like adventure at all? Is it going to be easy for me to be their friend? Even though if I try to be, it's not going to happen. Because again, friendship, in this case, Philia, we have to maintain. So, for example, we all have childhood friends, right? When you were in school, you're like, oh yeah, my buddy. And then after 10 years, maybe you went to another country and you didn't see each other again. Maybe you still talk, you're good acquaintances, but you're not good friends, right? Because friends is different. So again, it comes to that we cannot choose friendship, in this case, Philia. But I would like to give an example of the Bible, of Philia, and I want to go to 1 Samuel chapter 18. This is the example of David and Jonathan. Some of you already heard of it. 1 Samuel chapter 18. And in this case, we will see, I will read from 1 till 9. Now it came about that he had finished speaking to Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. Saul took him that day and did not let him return to his father. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was of him and gave it David with his armor, including his sword and his bow and his belt. So David went out wherever Saul sent him and prospered. And Saul set him over the man of war. And so it continues, but here we see in the first part already that Jonathan was found of David, and they became friends. But here you see, it just happened. It doesn't say that Jonathan chose. Like Saul chose to keep David, but Jonathan didn't. He was just, wow, hey, we're friends. And because they were friends, Saul decided to, hey, I'm going to keep your friends right here. So here we can see filial love expressed in its most pure form. The relationship between David and Jonathan is friendship. Yes. But it was such a strong friendship that only way to accurately describe it is to use the word love. Because you have different types of friendship too. You have people, you will call it friendship, right? That's another question that I asked the youth, like, what is friendship? And I heard different kind of questions. Like people that bring you food. Well, you can make friends with people that bring you food, right? Free food, right? But does that make them your real friend? Not per se. Not all the time. But sometimes it can grow into a friendship. But again, you don't have control of that. You don't choose that type of love. So we have Eros, we have Philia love, two types of love that we can't really control. But there's a third, and that is the Storge. Or I don't know if I pronounce it right, Storge or Storge. Yeah, Storge. So, Storge love type, I want to go to the definition right away. So, Storge is best described as the love for a family member. One comparison would be the love brothers and sisters have for each other. But perhaps a better illustration would be the love between a parent and a child, right? This Storge love, I will go and ask the same question. Is this love perfect? Can this love fade away? Well, in this case, it can. And not only in this case. Sometimes you see, well, I don't know, everybody watch television here, everybody watch Netflix, and there's different shows that you have the cases and the judge have to decide what's going to happen with the child, you know, divorces and all of that. And then the child, he's just in the middle of that, right? And sometimes, in this case, he feels like he's not loved, or he gets in the mix of the whole trouble, and that it becomes so extreme that the love can fade. Like the trouble became so strong that separated the parents, but that it also can separate the parent and the child. And that is strong, because the love of a parent and a child, I'm not a parent yet, but I have parents and I've seen a lot of parents. And when they talk about their child, it's like another world. Like my friend Rick, he just became father. And my question is going to be, did he choose to love that child? Or he's the father. I mean, he was there when the child, you know, you see a little baby, it's yours. What is there left to just love that child? So you just love it. Love the child. Love him. But the question remains, right? Can Storge be corrupted? Like, for example, I have brothers, and we used to fight a lot when we were younger. And it was a fun fight sometimes, but sometimes it get out of hand. And when we fight with each other, at that day, we don't look at each other. We just fought, we're angry. But the next day, I'm like, hey, what's up, man? You're my brother. So I can't control that. He's my brother. I was born in the family, and I just love them. And vice versa, I hope. Yeah. But to answer the question again, Storge can be corrupted? Yes, it can. So like I said, the parent loving their child so much that also he or she becomes more important than anything else that parent's life, including God. And there it becomes something that is not good. You can love your child, but if you love your child more than God, it becomes corrupted. Their love for the child becomes an idol. Now, what does the Bible say about it? In this case, the Bible doesn't specifically mention Storge love, but it does, however, describe the complete lack of Storge love twice. So I would like to go to Romans 1, verse 29. Romans 1, verse 29. So here it's talking about, I will start from 28. And just they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to depraved mind, to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. Well, in this case, the word used for, in this case, in this one, in another translation, instead of using disobedient to parents, or they will use, in this case, no love. It's like you have no love. And in this case, the no love here, the Greek word is astorges, which can also be translated as what you see here, heartless. Like I said before, heart is deceitful, but in this case, heartless. It means you have no feeling at all. Hate, right? They have such a lack of love that they cannot even love their own family. That is a lack of love. That's crazy lack of love, that you can't love your family. But I would like to use another example in 2 Timothy 3, verse 1 to 5. 2 Timothy 3, verse 1 to 5. I'll read it. But realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come. For men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revilers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasures rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power. Avoid such men as these. Now we see in here again, unloving. Again we see the unloving is without love. So this word, just like in Roman, it uses the same word, without love, meaning hateful, heartless. So now we have Eros, we have Philia, we have Storge. And again, to the question, is love a choice? Eros is not a choice. Philia is not a choice. Storge is not a choice per se. Well, but then why does the Bible make such a big deal about love if it's essentially uncontrollable? Because there's a fourth, and that is the agape. And I believe we've been talking about that for weeks, and last week we talked about the agape love also, when Douglas explained the upward spiral, right? So Jesus was saying that if you love me, I will love you, and if you love me, I will send the Spirit, and if you love me, the Father will love you. But the only way we can love is because He loved us first. So this is the agape love. And so it goes on like the spiral. But I would like to go to the definition of agape here. Agape is the most powerful type of love, and simultaneously the hardest to do correctly. Agape love is, to put it simply, completely selflessness. The love that God has for us. This is the type of love that we are called to emulate, because it is the only type of love that we choose to do. All other forms of love can fade, right? Eros can fade, Philia can fade, Storge can fade, but agape does not fade. Even the love of your family, like I said here, Storge, can end. But agape love is eternal. Agape love never fades. But now, I'm saying this, but how do I know this? Well, we had a scripture reading from 1 Corinthians 13, and I would like to read it one more time. It's the famous love chapter, that talks about, it describes the biblical love perfectly. So, I believe I have it right here, and I don't have to look it up. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, that I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. And the literal word used here in Greek is agape, not Eros, not Philia or Storge. It's agape, which is the eternal love, the unending love, the love that never fails or fades. So this love is very, very powerful. And this is the same love that God showed us through His Son, when He sent His Son to die for us in our place so that we can be saved. That is agape. He chose to do that. It's not something that He saw as like, oh, wow, these people are pretty, so let me see if I can save them. It was not such a love like Eros or just Philia or Storge, but it's something much bigger. And we can also see this word used also in the context of marriage. So you have an husband, you have a wife, husband and wife. The husband shall love his wife. The word used here, and I would like to go to that verse right away, is Ephesians 5:25. Yes, right here. Ephesians 5:25. And see here, the husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave Himself up for her, so that He might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that He might present Himself, the church, in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. See here, in this verse, he's comparing the relationship between a husband and a wife with Christ and the church. And what love does Christ have for the church? You can answer. It's the agape love, yes. And husbands should love their wives with the agape love. But again, like Douglas said last week, how do we do that? How do we reflect the agape love? Is when we receive it from God. So God loves us, and then we get to participate in that. So again, if I go back to the question, is love a choice? I would say it depends what type you're talking about. But then I would say yes. Agape love is a choice. You decide to love. And this love is so powerful that this is the love that keeps relationships, marriages, families together. Church together. Is the agape love that we decide to love each other and not just wake up with a feeling, I want to love this person, yes or no. You decide, you take a commitment to love. And that it is much bigger than just the other types of love. And it is the literally most important thing we can do as a believer. And at the same time, the most powerful thing we can do. Because agape love is chosen, it's always pure. You can't corrupt agape love. As soon as you try, it's no longer agape. It becomes one of the other types. So here, of the 4 love types, only one can be chosen. You will see in your note, agape. God did this intentionally because agape is the most powerful and echoes the love He has for us. Just like the upward spiral, the spin-off, that's the echo, right? So we receive it from Him, we love Him, and it keeps growing, and it never fades. But I gotta say, agape love is not easy. See, it required Christ to die for us. So it's not something, okay, check. It's not something like that, but Christ died for us. So instead of us dying, He did that so that we can be saved. So it's not easy. In fact, it will be one of the hardest things you'll ever to do. But agape love is exactly what Jesus was describing also in the two greatest commandments. In Mathew 22, 36, 40, where it says, love God, right? With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And also, then the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. That is where it echoes. So the agape, you choose. So God chose to love us so that we can choose to love Him. And that we can choose to love each other. And also, we see agape in the Great Commission. In Matthew 28, 18 to 20, which is our mission, and also it's part of the mission of Wi-Fi. I remember I was talking to Malcolm about it too, with the vision, the mission, and this verse is part of it, which we have to go and make disciples to all nations, and make them, teach them to believe, teach them everything that Jesus taught us. And we know that Jesus is always with us. In this case, in this Matthew 28, 18, the Great Commission, and why is it agape love? Because do you go to evangelize to someone with the Eros? Do you have the courage to evangelize just with Philia or with Storge? Well, I remember in Curacao, when I was part of Crew, Campus for Christ, we used to do these activities. We just go in the downtown and we just choose somebody to give the gospel to. That's not easy. It might sound like it is, but you have to choose, like, okay, I'm going to this person. It's not something that just happens. And in this case, we have to decide to love everybody, to love each other. And it's that love that we love each other, and I love you so much that I want you to get the good news. Just like the soccer game, when somebody wins, you go and celebrate, is the good news that we have in Jesus. So this love, if I have the good news, I love you so much that I don't want you to miss it, which is Christ. And it's always Christ, and it will always be Jesus Christ. Well, that is exactly what I want us to remember, and I want to encourage everyone, all of us, to go through the week, the year, every day, because it is a daily decision. Whether you're at work, whether you're at school, whether you're at home, you have people around you. And I want to encourage you to love each other, but not with Eros, Philia, and Storge only, because they do exist, but with the agape love. And believe me, when you have the agape love, all the rest will come, and they will be much better than just on their own, because you have the complete package of love. Well, I would like to close in prayer. Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for this opportunity that we have to also participate in your love. And I want us to remember, Lord, help us remember every day that you are the source of love, that you are the source of agape, and that only you can provide us with real love. I want to ask you also to give us wisdom, give us strength and the courage to go out and preach the gospel, go out and share the good news of Jesus Christ through all the earth. And I want to ask you for guidance and also for we to continue loving you every day. And I want to ask you also to encourage our church that we can love each other daily more and more and choose to love each other with the perfect love that never fades, that comes from you. I I want to thank you for everything, and I want to ask you also for the rest of the day that protect us and that we can continue to worship you and also give you all the glory that you deserve. Thank you everything in the name of Jesus. Amen.